So let's take a look at writing an equation from a trig graph. Okay, so again, this is what the formula should look like in standard form. This is a graph, and these are going to be the steps. So you need to find your max. Your maximum right there is going to be 6. Your minimum is going to be 2. Your amplitude is your maximum minus your minimum divided by 2. So 6 minus 2 is 4, divided by 2 is 2. Okay, so this is what the equation looks like. You found your amplitude. Where does that go? Amplitude is A, so it's right at the beginning, so 2. You can use your amplitude to find your midline. So you know your amplitude is 2, so it goes from 6 to 4. Or you can start from the minimum from 2 to 4, going up by 2 your amplitude. Do not forget that your midline is always y equals, so that's y equals 4. All right, so now you're going to put that in the equation. Where does your midline go? It goes right at the end, so plus 4. All right, now remember that your graph for what your graph for sine y looks like and your graph for sine cosine x looks like. All right, so your maximum and the minimum for both is going to be +1 and -1. And you have to know your 5 quadrantal points. This is a listening check. Color in 5 quadrantal points for x in radians. All right, remember that sine always starts at the origin, then it goes up to 1, down to -1. That's one period is 2 pi. Half of 2 is 1, and half of that is a half, and then 3/4 is 3/2. Okay. Cosine starts from 1, looks like a wine glass. Again, the period is also 2 pi, so half is pi. Half of that is a half, and then 3/4 is 3/2. Right? From -1 to +1. So you have to memorize this in the 5 quadrantal points. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. This is a listening check. Put a box around phase shift on the left-hand side. Okay, so a phase shift is how many spaces it was moved to the left or right so that it now looks like the graph above. So that's original. This graph has been moved from sine. It's moved to the left, right? So sine used to be at the origin. It's no longer at the origin. It's been moved to the left-hand side. So that's what a phase shift is. Okay, so it's how many boxes that's been moved to the left. So it used to be there at the origin, and now it's moved 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 boxes to the left. Because it's inside, remember it's going to be opposite of what you think. So because it's moved to the left, you're going to think it's subtract. But remember, it is opposite. So it's really addition. So you're going to add. Okay. It's going to be plus. So I just need to know what each box is worth. Okay, so it goes up in 2s. So half of 2 would be 1. So 1 right there. And then half of that would be a half. So each box is worth a half. So let me count in halves. Half, 1, 1.5, 2. So you see, each box has 1 half, and 4 boxes will be 2. So it's plus 2. Because again, left is opposite. So it's going to be, you would think subtract, but it's really add. So listening check, color in each box. All right, let's fill in whatever we already know. We already know the amplitude was 2, and we know the midline was plus 4. So again, we're just building our equation, and these are the steps to build it. All right, well, what if it was cosine? So let's take a look at a cosine graph. All right, cosine starts at +1. So you find the top of that graph, which is right there. And how has it been moved? It was right at the y-intercept, at the y-axis, but now it's gone to the right. How many boxes? 2. And remember, each box is 0.5, so that's 0.5 and then 1. So it's been moved to the right 1. So it was moved to the right. And remember, it's opposite, right? Opposite, you would think right is plus, but it's really minus. And because each box is a half, it was moved 1, so that's -1. All right, go ahead and put the amplitude and the midline. So again, I'm showing you that, this graph could be written as sine as cosine. All right, let's find the period. So remember, your equation is 2 pi over whatever your period is. And how do you find your period? Your maximum to your maximum. So I already have one maximum point labeled. Label the other maximum. And you're just going to count the boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. All right, so it was 24 boxes. All right, and each one is a half, so that means it's going to be 12. So 2 pi divided by 12. Now, a faster way of doing that than counting would be looking at the right value, which is 13, looking at the left value, which is 1, and subtracting them. So you see, you get the same answer whether you're counting or doing right minus left. So that simplifies to pi over 6. All right, so let's go ahead and fill in the equation of what we know. So a period is pi, or rather b value, sorry, is pi over 6. Your phase shift was +2. Your midline was +4. Your amplitude was 2. So actually, we finished writing the equation for sine. Let's go ahead and do the same thing for cosine. B is pi over 6, phase shift is -1, midline is +4, and amplitude is 2. So again, two equations for the exact same graph. All right, so note what happens when you multiply b into the parentheses. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to write down the sine equation, multiply it in. I'm going to get pi over 6x plus pi over 6 times 2 is going to give me pi over 3 plus 4. Okay, so notice sometimes you look at the equation like this, you have to first write it in standard form by dividing everything by that pi over 6. Okay, so very important that b is outside. All right, it must be outside when you're dealing with the phase shift. So I'm going to do half the examples and then you're going to try some. So looking at number 2, what is the amplitude? Maximum, which is 2, minus the minimum, which is -2, divided by 2. That's going to give me 4 divided by 2, which is 2. So count 2 boxes. That's my midline. So my midline is at the line y equals 0. Okay, now let's take a look at the phase shift. So this is a sine value. So I know that with sine, it's supposed to start at the origin, then make one period, right? So this does not start at the origin. It starts up there. So it's been moved. All right, you can move either direction. So you can actually turn out to have a different equation than I do. But I'm going to pick this as what it's been moved. So it's been moved left half a box. So I need to determine what half a box is. So if 2 boxes is pi over 2, half of that is pi over 4. Half of that is going to be pi over 8. Okay, and I'll do the math here. So what am I doing is dividing it by 2 each time. Okay, so if I divide by 2, I can multiply by the reciprocal. So that's pi over 4 divided by 2. It's going to keep, then change, then flip. And that becomes pi over 8. Okay, so it's just a little math of something you should know. So each box is pi over 8. So it's been moved to the left, pi over 8. Now, because I think it's to the left, it's going to be opposite of what you think, right? So it's going to be plus. So it's plus pi over 8. So listening check, color in plus pi over 8. So to find b, it's 2 pi over period, right? So what's a period? Maximum to maximum. So just mark out 2 maximums. So here's 2 maximums. That's 1 period. Count the number of boxes. That's 2 boxes. Each box is pi over 4. So 2 of them will be 2 times pi over 4. So I can see from the graph it's pi over 4. So 2 times pi over 4 is going to give me, that crosses out pi over 2. All right, so it's going to be 2 pi divided by your period, which is now pi over 2. You're going to keep the top 2 pi, change the division to multiplication, and flip the bottom 2 over pi. Cross out the pi's, and that's going to give you 4. So b is equal to 4. That's the number in front. So let me write my equation. It's sine. So my amplitude is 2. Then sine. And then what's my b? B is 4. Then x. And then what was my phase shift? Plus pi over 8. And then what was my midline? Plus 0. I don't need to put that. So this is my equation. Now, this is only one of the equations that you could get. So your answer actually may vary from mine. All right, let's go ahead and do another one. So we're just going to repeat the process. This time we're going to do cosine. So what does the cosine graph looks like? All right, so the original cosine graph starts at 1 and looks like a wine glass. And its period is 2 pi. All right, so amplitude for a regular one is 1. So let's look at an amplitude for what we have right now. So my maximum and my minimum points. So 3 minus -3 divided by 2, which is 6 divided by 2, which is 3. So 3 boxes will be my midline. So my midline is at y equals 0. But I'm going to go ahead and write that down for us. This is a listening check. Go ahead and color in this work. All right, so my midline is y equals 0. My phase shift, okay, how's it moved? It used to be up there, now it's gone 2 boxes to the right. All right, so 2 boxes to the right. That's my phase shift. All right, and remember, it's going to be opposite of what you think. So if it's right, you think plus, but it's really going to be minus. And then you need to figure out what each box is and multiply by 2. So if I look at this really closely, it tells me my new position is pi over 6. So that's really my 2 boxes. So I don't have to count anything. So that's going to be pi over 6. Going to look at my b values, 2 pi over your period. So remember, pick any 2 maximum points, right? So I pick these 2 maximum. Well, I don't pick that one because it does have a point. So those 2 maximum points because it has a point. And that's going to be 1 period. So in this one, I have no choice but to do the right value, which is pi over 2, minus the left value, which is pi over 6. So my period is pi over 2 minus pi over 6. Do not let this confuse you. You can put all of that in the calculator, but I am going to do it by hand but you can put that in the calculator so you don't have to get confused by this. All right, so if you put in the calculator, it'll give you 6, but I'm going to do by hand. So it's 2 pi divided by pi over 2 minus pi over 6. Okay, so before I can combine fractions, the denominator has to be the same. So I multiply the bottom by 3, top by 3. So I'm going to get 3 pi minus pi is 2 pi over the common 6. Then I'm going to keep, change, flip. 6 over 2 pi. Cross out, and I'm left with 6. So again, don't let that confuse you because you just put it in the calculator. All right, let's write the equation. Y equals the amplitude, which is 3, cosine, because this time we're writing cosine. What is B? 6. And then the period shift minus 6, pi over 6, sorry. And then my midline is plus 0. All right, let me do one more example for you. So this time let's look at sine. So again, start with the amplitude. So how do I get from your maximum? That looks like the maximum is a half and the minimum is negative 1.5. So the amplitude is negative 0.5 minus negative 1.5 divided by 2, which is going to give you 0.5. Okay, so my amplitude is 0.5. That makes sense because it goes 0.51, 1.52. All right, so that's my midline when you count 0.5. So y equals negative 1. And please write y equals negative 1. In fact, that's a listening check. Just to show you that you can write it different ways. Remember, the sign is supposed to go up and then down. This one's going down, then up. So instead of writing a period shift, I'm going to reflect it because if I reflect it, the bottom is going to go to the top. All right, so reflection is a negative on the outside. All right, period is maximum to maximum, and I'm going to do right minus left, or you can count the boxes, whichever way you want to do it. But I'm going to do right minus left, so 7 pi over 12 minus the left side, which is pi over 4. And I'm going to put that in the calculator so that you don't get confused, and you're going to get 6. Again, I am going to show you how to do it by hand. So you're going to do 2 pi over, and these have to be the same before you can add and subtract. So I have to make that 412 by multiplying by 3. If I do it to the bottom, I do it to the top. So that's going to be 3 pi. Now I can combine them. So 7 minus 3 is 4 pi over 12. Then I'm going to keep, change, flip. So keep 2 pi, change division to multiplication, flip 4 pi over 12, you get 12 pi over 4 pi. Cross out, simplify. So I'm going to get 2 times 3, which is 6. Same thing as a calculator. Just make sure when you put in the calculator, put that bottom in parentheses. All right, I'm writing an equation for sine. So I'm going to go y equals, and because I'm reflecting the negative, then the amplitude, 1/2, then sine, then my b, which is 6, then x minus my midline because there was no period shift, no phase shift. I could have written this equation with a phase shift, but I chose not to. Let's practice.